Well, it wouldn't do any good to tell me anything because I was too stubborn to listen. I think it's dumb. A few more, there goes that happy ending.
Everyone knows Willie Nelson as the laid-back legend who got along with everyone. But the real reason he refused to work with some of music's biggest stars is far more shocking than you'd imagine. It all came to a head after his chart-topping duet with a global icon, when a single, disrespectful act in public ended their partnership forever. What really happened behind the scenes with his famous collaborators? And who were the legends that secretly couldn't stand the red-headed stranger's outlaw style? We're about to expose the untold rivalries that defined his career. Subscribe now so you don't miss the truth. Willie Nelson's first major war wasn't fought on a stage, but for the very soul of country music. As his outlaw movement started to redefine the genre in the 1970s, the old guard grew resentful, and its most vocal critic was country royalty himself, Hank Williams Jr., a staunch traditionalist. Williams Jr. saw Nelson as a direct threat to the clean-cut, Nashville-centric image he upheld. He openly condemned Willie's long hair, his signature bandana, and his unapologetic support for marijuana legalization. To Hank Jr., this wasn't just a different style. It was a betrayal of country music's core values, tarnishing the legacy his own legendary father had built. But Willie refused to be drawn into a public mudslinging match. Instead of firing back with insults, he responded with his signature, laid-back grace, emphasizing that personal freedom mattered more than anything. By taking the high road, Nelson didn't just win the argument. He cemented his image as the cool-headed rebel who couldn't be shaken. Yet, while he could easily deflect these direct attacks, a quieter and more bitter rivalry was brewing with another star, one who felt his own spotlight was being stolen. The next challenge to Willie's world didn't come from an ideological opponent, but from a polished superstar who felt his career was being eclipsed, the legendary Glen Campbell. As the Rhinestone Cowboy, Campbell was a titan of the industry, known for his flawless vocals and massive crossover appeal. He was the pinnacle of the polished Nashville sound. But as Willie's raw, gritty, and unapologetically authentic outlaw style began to captivate the nation, Campbell felt the ground shifting beneath his feet. This wasn't a feud of public insults, but one of quiet, professional resentment. In interviews, Campbell made subtle comments hinting at his frustration, suggesting the industry was suddenly rewarding a rugged image over pure musical talent. He seemed baffled that his carefully crafted perfection was being overlooked for Nelson's raw storytelling. For his part, Willie wasn't competing with Campbell. He was just being himself. His rise wasn't a deliberate attack, but it inadvertently cast a long shadow over Campbell's reign. However, professional jealousy was one thing. A direct personal insult from a collaborator was something else entirely, and it would lead to one of Willie's most surprising fallouts. In 1984, Willie Nelson joined forces with Spanish crooner Julio Iglesias for one of the most unlikely duets in music history, "To All the Girls I've Loved Before." The song was a global phenomenon, topping charts worldwide and creating an iconic musical moment. But the partnership behind this super duet was about to implode in the most public way possible. According to reports, the two artists were at a high-profile event when Willie, expecting a friendly greeting, was met with a stunningly cold reception. Iglesias, surrounded by his entourage, allegedly acted as if he barely knew his collaborator. For a man like Willie, who values loyalty and down-to-earth respect above all else, this public snub was more than just an insult. It was an unforgivable betrayal of their partnership. There was no dramatic confrontation or angry press release. Willie simply made a quiet decision, and from that day on, any talk of future collaborations vanished. That single moment of perceived arrogance was enough to permanently sever the ties. But while a personal slight could end a partnership, Willie had a much different reaction when a rock legend attacked the one thing he held sacred, his music. You would think two legendary nonconformists like Willie Nelson and rock icon Neil Young would be natural allies. But in a surprising critique, Young reportedly took aim at the very heart of Willie's musical identity, his one-of-a-kind guitar playing. Willie's style, performed on his battered and beloved guitar, Trigger, is famously unconventional, a complex blend of behind-the-beat phrasing and intricate, jazz-influenced fingerpicking that no one else can replicate. Yet Young, a celebrated guitar hero himself, allegedly dismissed Willie's intricate style as being overly simplistic. For any other artist, having a legend publicly question your musicianship would be a devastating blow. But if Young was expecting a defensive reaction, he fundamentally misunderstood the man. Willie reportedly met the criticism with his trademark laid-back attitude, brushing it off without a second thought. He was so supremely confident in his unique sound that a critique from an outsider, even a respected one, simply didn't matter. Brushing off an opinion like that was easy, but navigating the relationship with his closest creative partner, man who was both his brother-in-arms and his biggest rival, was a far more complicated story. Of all the relationships in Willie Nelson's life, none was more legendary, more turbulent, or more profound than the one he shared with his fellow outlaw-in-chief, Waylon Jennings. Together, they were the architects of the outlaw country movement, two rebels who took on the Nashville establishment and won. Their bond was forged in smoky honky-tonks and on long bus rides, creating iconic albums like Waylon and Willie that defined an era. But that brotherhood was famously volatile. They clashed over everything from musical arrangements to lifestyle choices. Waylon's fiery, explosive temper often ran headfirst into Willie's infuriatingly calm demeanor, leading to legendary arguments that could clear a room. They were two powerful creative forces, and when they disagreed, the sparks were bound to fly. Yet, no matter how intense their fights became, their loyalty to one another was absolute. There was an unspoken understanding. They could tear into each other behind closed doors, but if any outsider dared to cross one of them, they would face the wrath of both. Theirs was a friendship defined by conflict and unwavering respect. But while his bond with Waylon was tested by arguments, his friendship with an early mentor was nearly destroyed by a bizarre act involving a shotgun. Long before Willie Nelson was an outlaw legend, he was a struggling songwriter mentored by country star Ray Price. Price gave Willie his big break and hired him as a bassist, forming a deep friendship that should have been unbreakable. But their bond was nearly shattered by one of the most bizarre events in country music history. The conflict didn't start over a song or a woman, it started over a rooster. This wasn't just any bird. It was Ray Price's prize-winning rooster, which he adored. For reasons that remain a topic of country music lore, a heavily intoxicated Willie Nelson decided one night that the rooster had to go. He grabbed a shotgun and, in a moment of sheer chaos, shot his mentor's prize bird. Price was devastated and enraged. He had taken Willie under his wing, and this felt like a profound betrayal. The fallout was immediate, with Price refusing to speak to Nelson for a long time. Eventually, however, their bond proved stronger than the bizarre incident, and a deeply remorseful Willie made amends. Mending a fence with an old friend was one thing, but years later, Willie would face a completely unexpected dispute with a modern pop superstar. Just when it seemed Willie Nelson's days of controversy were behind him, he found himself in a surprising musical showdown with one of the biggest pop stars on the planet, Ed Sheeran. The dispute ignited when both artists released songs with strikingly similar titles and lyrical themes. While coincidences happen, Nelson's team felt this was too close for comfort. Accusations began to surface that Sheeran's track had borrowed heavily from Willie's signature storytelling style, crossing a line of creative integrity. The situation grew tense, with rumors of potential legal action from Nelson's camp making the rounds. It was shaping up to be a classic David versus Goliath battle, pitting the country outlaw against a modern pop giant. But before the lawyers could take over, the two musicians chose a different path. They reportedly arranged a private meeting, face-to-face, to resolve the issue directly. In that quiet conversation, the feud that could have become a massive public spectacle was settled amicably. Settling a score with another artist was one thing, but soon, Willie would face an opponent that couldn't be won over with a private conversation, an entity that wanted to take everything he owned, the IRS. Willie Nelson had faced down music rivals his entire life, but in the early 1990s, he began a war with his most powerful opponent yet. This enemy didn't care about hit songs or outlaw credibility. It wanted every single penny he had. The IRS hit Willie with a shocking bill for millions in unpaid taxes, citing years of bad investments. Suddenly, the red-headed stranger wasn't just fighting for his reputation. He was fighting for his survival. In a humiliating move, federal agents seized nearly all his assets. They took his Texas ranch, his recording studio, and personal memorabilia, auctioning his life off to the highest bidder. For almost anyone else, this would have been a career-ending catastrophe. But Willie fought back like a true outlaw. He recorded a raw, deeply personal album with a defiant title, The IRS Tapes. Who'll Buy My Memories? He sold it directly to his fans, with proceeds going straight to his dead. The plan was a genius move, allowing him to eventually sell his account and reclaim his life. He had stared down the US government and won, but there was one conflict left, a quiet misunderstanding with a brother-in-arms that truly tested his loyalty. Willie Nelson and Johnny Cash were more than just contemporaries. They were close friends and pillars of the supergroup The Highwaymen. Their bond seemed indestructible, built on decades of mutual respect. But even this legendary friendship was once pushed to its breaking point by a simple misunderstanding over a song. The trouble began in the 1980s when Cash fell in love with a song Willie had written and believed it had been promised to him for his next album. When he discovered that Willie had decided to record the track himself, the man in black felt it was a deep personal betrayal. To Cash, a man who lived by a strict code of honor, a promise between friends was sacred. The easy camaraderie between the two icons instantly cooled, and their friendship hung by a thread. But thankfully, their bond proved too strong to be broken. They eventually sat down for an honest conversation, cleared the air, and rebuilt the trust that had been shaken. This ability to mend fences, whether with a rival or a dear friend, reveals the true character behind the outlaw legend. After a career filled with rivalries and standoffs, there was one relationship that stood apart, a bond built not on conflict, but on pure, unshakable respect. That was Willie's friendship with the other giant of outlaw country, Merle Haggard. For years, many tried to pit the two legends against each other, expecting a clash of titans. But there was no feud. There was no professional jealousy or quiet resentment. Instead, there was a deep camaraderie between two men who saw themselves as brothers in arms. They shared a profound love for honest storytelling and a mutual understanding of a life lived outside the lines of the Nashville establishment. This bond was perfectly captured in their iconic 1983 duet, Pancho and Lefty. The song wasn't a competition. It was a seamless conversation between two masters, a testament to their relationship. In an industry driven by ego, their friendship was a rare and powerful thing, proving that Merle Haggard wasn't Willie's rival. He was the brother he chose. From ideological wars with country's old guard to a showdown with the IRS, the life of Willie Nelson has been a series of legendary battles. These stories paint a picture of a man far more complex than his peaceful persona suggests. He was a loyal friend who could also permanently sever ties over a single act of disrespect. He fought with his closest brothers like Waylon Jennings and Johnny Cash, but always found a way back through mutual respect. He outsmarted the government with a guitar and found common ground with pop stars half his age. Ultimately, Willie's outlaw status was never just a marketing gimmick. It was his personal code. It was a commitment to living by his own rules of honor, loyalty, and authenticity, regardless of the consequences. This unwavering commitment to his own path is the true secret to his longevity and why, after all the feuds and fallouts, he remains one of the most beloved figures in music history. If we missed anything about Willie's legendary life, let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching.